serving in the military is not a human right. No one is required to have, like it's not a right to serve in the military, first of all. We can get into that a little bit.
Okay, yes, it's not a right to serve in the military, but why are they being kicked out of the military? It's on the basis of them being trans. So that's transphobic right there. Welcome back to your favorite anime, Hunter x Hunter. In today's video, I will be reviewing a portion of a debate that I had a couple years ago with the quote-unquote crazy liberal chick. Now, it's my memory that this person was a little kooky, okay? So odds are we're going to be critiquing her arguments as well. However, I will also be critiquing my own arguments because I was very much a conservative at the time. I was all in support of Trump and the border wall and all that bullshit. So I think it'll be a very interesting conversation to review. Now, the video is an hour and 30 minutes, so it's very unlikely we're going to go through all of it, but we'll go through it for a decent amount of time. Okay? So get your popcorn in your mouth, okay? Shove it in your pie hole. Sit down on your butt, get comfy, and let's go on with another episode of Hunter x Hunter.
We're going to talk a little bit. The first topic is going to be about Trump and LGBT. And what we're going to do first is we are going to give the first question over to Alyssa. Okay, why don't you try? Let's try this. Okay, define transphobia and illustrate why you think it is or isn't a profound social issue.
So I would really define transphobia as just having any type of hatred towards trans people just because of the fact that they're trans, or believing that they shouldn't have any equal rights or anything like that. I definitely still see it as a tangible issue today. I mean, there's plenty of evidence, especially with the Trump administration, with the military ban, with their agenda. I don't know if you guys know this. Oh, but just for specifically trans. I'm sorry, because I don't want to get too much into all LGBTQ, but just specifically for trans individuals, the Trump admin also wants to roll back rulings that prevent doctors, hospitals, and health insurance companies from discriminating against transgender people. Jeff Sessions also reversed.
So she's correct here, and this is some of the problem with the beginning of her argument here is she shouldn't have defined transphobia as hatred against trans people. You don't really know if somebody hates trans people. I would define transphobia as holding a belief or a position or advocating for certain things that results in the harm of trans people. So when Donald Trump, for example, wanted to give medical institutions religious exemptions so that they wouldn't have to treat trans people, that does a real harm to trans people. So I think that would classify as transphobia. So that right off the bat is a better argument than saying transphobia is anything involving the hatred of trans people. You can be transphobic and not hate trans people. Absolutely. You can advocate for backwards bullshit ideas that might not stem from hatred of trans people, but that belief will result in the harm of trans people. So quick correction there.
Discrimination law policy saying that transgender individuals could be denied employment just because they are trans. We also have some stuff with our current education department that's gotten rid of guidelines that were in place to create a more equal learning space for transgender students. So I definitely think it's a very tangible issue today. And I have several people close to me that are trans that I talk about this with on a regular basis. And I attend a lot of transgender activist events and things like that to stand.
So she's hitting, unfortunately, on a lot of the stereotypical crazy liberal things here, where I have the trans friends. I talk to my friends. This sounds weak. This sounds pathetic. And for any conservative watching or listening to this, they're instantly going to think, oh, you think transphobia is a big deal because you talked to your trans friend? What a weak fucking argument. So I would avoid bringing up your friend.
And from that side aisle, from the people who this is actually affecting, they obviously seem very concerned about it.
Okay, Hunter, how about yourself? How would you define transphobia and why you think it is or isn't a profound social issue?
I think transphobia is an irrational fear of transgender people. And yes, I agree with Alyssa, is a discrimination, hatred towards people for being transgender. I agree that transphobia is a real thing. I agree that it exists. I agree that there are people who despise transgender people and wish harm upon them. I am not one of those people, which I'm sure we will get into later. Yeah, see, you're already rolling your eyes, so all right. And I also do not think that the Trump administration is transphobic. I think that a lot of these
So by defining transphobia like this, you can easily argue that, well, Trump doesn't hate trans people, he's just giving more rights to religious people, blah, 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 blah. No, transphobia is any kind of belief that results in the harm of transgender people. So by Trump, for example, kicking trans people out of the military, this was stupid. This was pathetic. Trans people had already been confirmed suitable to serve in the military much earlier on. I think it was in the early 2000s. And then Trump just rolled this back. Why? Because he claimed trans people were going to be too expensive or some bullshit. It was irrational in that case. So that might even fit a little bit in the definition I gave, but I would have given a much better definition now, of course. Were you transphobic back then? Yeah, I would definitely spread a lot of bullshit about trans people. But I don't think that I believed that I hated trans people. I don't think that a lot of my beliefs stemmed from like hatred and bigotry of trans people. I think that it was more a misunderstanding of trans issues, and that would cause me to spread a lot of misinformation, which would result in other people being hateful towards trans people. But I would argue that my content was absolutely transphobic because my content did a net harm on trans people.
Back policies that we hear about are either taken out of context or oversimplified for the sake of an anti-Trump agenda. For example, Alyssa, I knew you were going to bring up the military ban. That's the one that the go-to one everyone goes to. Serving in the military is not a human right. No one is required to have like it's not a right to serve in the military. First of all, we can get into that a little bit.
Okay, yes, it's not a right to serve in the military, but why are they being kicked out of the military? It's on the basis of them being trans. So that's transphobic right there.
More because I think that there's a very good reason as to why the Trump administration has barred transgender individuals. And as far as them rolling back these protections in school, that's what the media wants you to believe. They want you to believe that they have rolled back protections and now all of a sudden transgender students are able to be picked on or bullied in schools when that is not the case. All that he did was remove an Obama-era policy that basically forced schools to allow transgender individuals to use the bathroom of their choice. I personally don't think this needs to be something.
Okay, so this right here is a great example of me twisting bullshit, saying the media wants you to believe this. Oh my god, I sound so much like a conservative, like a Fox News talking head here. But no, trans people are directly harmed when they're forced to use the bathroom that doesn't correspond with their gender identity. Trans people are more likely to be assaulted, abused, and face mental health issues when their gender identity is not validated, and when they are forced to use a bathroom that does not correspond with their gender identity. That is more likely to result in harm on trans people. So yes, by Donald Trump getting rid of that provision where we already have studies which show that trans people are not disproportionately responsible for anything involving sexual assault, and it's the actual opposite, where they're more likely to be assaulted, not be the perpetrators of assault, then that's resulting in harm of trans people. Yes, that's transphobic. This isn't that complicated.
The federal government is involved in, I think it's much better being left up to the states as it is now. So plenty of states are still enforcing this bathroom policy. I'm sure in California, for example, transgender people can use whichever bathroom they please, but I don't think that should be a federal government enforcement. And lastly, I think that if we look at some other things the Trump administration has done, it actually shows that he is in support of LGBT people, because Trump is one of those people that I believe kind of like owns, if he doesn't like something, he's going to tell us. And I don't think that he's going to, like, why try to hide this idea? Like, why try to hide his transphobia behind all these policies and initiatives that he's enacting to actually help LGBT people? For example, Alyssa, I'm sure you've heard of the, let me try to find it right here. So when the Trump administration launches a global effort to end criminalization of homosexuality, I'm sure you have heard of that, correct?
Oh yeah, I definitely saw that with much skepticism, but sure.
Right, so let's start with
So the argument in response to that is, hey, that's good, obviously, but it also kind of reads as a virtue signal because Donald Trump is actively enacting policies which harm transgender people here in America, and now all of a sudden he's trying to initiate something to stop transphobia in another country, or to stop homophobia in another country. That sounds like a virtue signal, and even if it's not, even if Trump is going to do that, or even if he did do something like that, that is good, of course, that's worthy of praise, I guess, but it doesn't make up for the fact that Donald Trump has enacted multiple policies here in America that is negatively harming transgender people.
the military thing.
Yeah, I have something about the military I'd like to bring up if that's cool.
Yeah, sure.
I don't know if you're aware of this, but 80% of jobs in the military are actually non-combat. This includes tech jobs like a multimedia illustrator, cryptologic linguist, civilian jobs like marketing, program management, engineering jobs like construction engineer, watercraft engineer, environmental scientist, lab specialists, cyber computer repair, IT specialists. These are all jobs that transgender individuals, transgender Americans could have that are in non-combat positions.
Wait, what? Harm is such a subjective word? I feel as though I'm defining harm pretty well here. I've already explained that it harms trans people to not allow them to use the bathroom of their choice because that results in a higher likelihood of them being assaulted, and it harms their mental well-being, which as a minority group, their mental well-being is already greatly compromised. I feel as though I'm defining harm pretty concisely here, and it's you who is coping.
In addition, I don't know if you know this, but the military is the country's largest single employer of transgender people. As a result, thousands of transgender people would lose access to employment and healthcare with this military ban.
If I could just cut in really quickly, I have said this from day one because I actually did a video on this. I disagree with the notion or the idea that once this policy goes through, transgender individuals should be removed from the military. I do think that the policy, when it's enacted, should halt new transgender people entering the military, which we'll get into that in a second.
When it's
Well,
not
okay, so it's not a right to join the military, but you aren't even able to apply for the military if you're trans? Do you see the hypocrisy there, Hunter?
non-combat positions. You're purposely setting up a way.
It's not just about whether it's
transgender and Americans away from access to employment and healthcare. I just
It's not just
the largest
right, which healthcare is the
employer.
bit.
All right,
I don't think
let's keep it one at a time. We'll interject when we can. But do you have something to say, Alyssa?
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious that, like, I'm sure he's going to bring up the point about not wanting to pay for people's surgeries, but
Exactly,
I don't
yes.
understand why Republicans have why should I have to pay for soldiers with erectile dysfunction? But okay.
Right, and that's a common argument, but I mean, let's look at how much money it costs, first of all, to undergo sex changes. Second of all, one of the...
No, it's my understanding that the budget is higher. It costs more money to provide Viagra for people in the military through their healthcare than it would to provide a sex change operation. That's my understanding, at least. Second of all, Alyssa shouldn't have brought up, well, the argument isn't terrible that, like, there are a lot of other positions in the military as well, but I feel like a much stronger argument is that the Pentagon already determined that it was fine for trans people to be in the military in the early 2000s. The Pentagon already figured out that it was A-okay, didn't cost too much money, didn't cause any issue as far as the military strength goes. And so this is Trump now walking in, trampling over what the Pentagon said previously to instead enact something that deprives trans people from opportunity to access healthcare and employment. I think that that can contribute to a harm on trans people, and I think that that would suffice as transphobia. I feel like that might be a better argument, but, you know, maybe that's subjective.
requirements for serving in the military, whether it's combat or not, is good health. And if we look at statistics, the trans suicide rate...
we weren't talking about combat, but okay.
Right, well, you said it's not everyone serving in the military is in combat, correct?
Right.
But still, one of the requirements for serving in the military is good health. Is that also correct?
I
Oh, here
assume
we go.
so.
So if the trans suicide rate is at 41% versus 4.6% in the general public, and if we know that transgender individuals have a 55% of trans people suffer from high anxiety, according to studies done from 2005 and 2010.
Yeah, but why is that? It's because their body doesn't match their gender identity. If the military was providing sex change operations, they would be ameliorating that high suicide rate and the high anxiety rate, therefore making them more equipped to fight in the military. Like, what? That's a shit-ass argument, Hunter.
We know that they are not the most mentally stable people,
Why?
and
Why do you think they suffer from that? Why do you think they kill themselves?
She's trying to
Why
get
do you
there.
think they suffer from anxiety? Probably because they're getting kicked out of everything, and because of people
They're
like
not being
you that are
kicked out
putting
of-
this stuff into place.
Let's let Hunter finish his point, and then we can rebut after that.
well, I can rebut now. They're not being kicked out of everything. That's just, you're oversimplifying it and trying to blow the issue out of proportion.
They're not.
Again, the military is not a human right. They are not required to let anyone serve. And back to what I was saying as far as the good health goes, we also know that transgender individuals have a documented mental illness called gender dysphoria. And even if you don't agree with me on that, in order to even undergo a sex change, several well-documented cases of gender dysphoria are required to undergo a sex change. Not to mention, hormone replacement therapy can lead to heart failure, which is another medical problem that the military and the Pentagon
So
has to
would
take-
high anxiety. High anxiety can negatively contribute to heart issues as well. So by ameliorating the difference between their gender identity and their biology, you'd be making that far less likely to happen. I really hate when people like me would bring up these dipshit arguments that, oh, well, just the trans people aren't mentally stable. They have gender dysphoria. How do you fix that? How do you fix the suicide rate? How do you fix the gender dysphoria? We don't just say they have gender dysphoria, so bye-bye, no opportunity for you. We look at it on a medical basis and figure out, hey, by going through a sex change operation or by being accepted as their gender identity, this lowers the suicide rate, this lowers the likelihood of them having gender dysphoria, and therefore makes it far more likely that they are able to serve in the military. Second of all, I'm going to keep going back to the fact that I'm saying this isn't transphobia, this isn't bigotry, but I'm at the same time arguing that it's okay to deny somebody the ability to even try to be in the military on the basis of them being trans. That's like me saying it's not racist, okay? It's just that if you're black, you can't even try out for the military. But it's not racist. Like, this is textbook discrimination, bruh. Come on.
And strenuous exercise cannot begin until 6 to 8 weeks after the first sex change surgery. So when you're...
But Alyssa already clarified that not every field in the military requires strenuous exercise. So that's not really a great point. And that's not required to be good in the military.
Do we really think the military, which is building a fighting force to protect our country, whether they're in combat or not, do you really think the military should be housing and paying for people getting sex change operations? That just doesn't seem like the place, it doesn't seem like a good environment for transgender people to begin with.
Well, as you brought up earlier,
I think I'm going to look this up real quick because I'm curious now. Is the military even paying for sex changes at all? The Defense Health Agency for the first time approved payment for sex reassignment surgery for an active duty U.S. military service member. The patient, an infantry soldier who identifies as a woman, had already begun a course of treatment for gender reassignment. Okay. So again, this just provides a stronger military to have people in the military who then might start suffering from gender dysphoria get the medical treatment necessary.
Earlier about gender dysphoria, the quote unquote cure for that is transition. I mean, that is.
And I've supported that. Right. I've supported that in the past.
So,
yes.
And so them having access to serve our country because maybe they want to serve our country will give them access to that transition. And you know what?
Well,
I could totally get behind you if you're like, you know what, this is fine. But at the same time, you're not going to say anything against people, like I said, like Jeff Sessions, basically saying like, okay, we're going to do the military ban. But also, if you want to go in and get a job anywhere else, at a restaurant, at a desk job, whatever, that employer can say, yeah, I don't want to hire you because you're trans. So
right, and I have.
So you don't see how they're.
Let me look this one up too. Oh, transgender people not protected from workplace discrimination. He said the federal civil rights law does not protect transgender people from discrimination in the workplace, reversing an Obama administration policy issued nearly 3 years ago. So yeah, there's no way around this. And that's why I'm trying to back off of this point immediately, because I don't have a rebuttal. So if you're revoking certain protections to keep trans people from being discriminated against in the workforce, you are hurting trans people, and also in the process, you're hurting our economy.
There's several things in place. There's several obstacles in place to keep transgender individuals and Americans from being able to access healthcare and employment. And you're like trying to fight it at every single turn. You're not getting any outlets.
I am not trying to fight it.
I heard you say nothing. I watched your videos and I saw your any of your videos that are LGBTQ. Like for the whole thing with Sessions, you're like, oh, it's a memo. It might not even happen. Well, guess what? It happened. So
right.
Yeah.
Did it pass?
Yeah.
When?
I don't have the exact date. I can find it for you. I have a whole 2 pages of sources here that I'm going to post up on the link and give you after this if you want to post it up for your people.
Okay, sure. It was to my understanding that it was just a memo that was obtained. I hadn't even heard any further.
Well, discrimination law policy has been reversed. Like that is now a thing. Like people can say, "Hi, I'm not going to employ you because you're trans," and that's legal.
Right. And I'm sure that fell under religious freedom stuff, right?
Yeah, but it should. That's not.
Which
not
listen, here's the thing. I agree that I think that religious people, when it comes to LGBT stuff, is stupid. I think that it's like if I owned a business and I had held strict Christian beliefs, I would never be opposed to employing transgender individuals because I disagreed with their lifestyle. I don't think that's right. However, this comes down to a debate on private companies and what these private companies are allowed to do.
Wait, would the debate involving whether or not you can allow black people to enter your establishment? Just saying it's a private business or there's religious grounds does not justify discrimination.
Someone might say, listen, I'm Christian, I own this company, I want to have the freedom to choose who I employ for whatever reason.
What if they don't want to? What if they don't want to employ black people? Then what? You're fucked. This is such a bad argument. Yes, of course they have freedom of speech, they have freedom of association, but that does not extend to protected groups. Not hiring trans people does nothing to benefit your business. Hiring trans people does nothing to harm your business. This doesn't make sense, and it would be based on nothing but bigotry.
With that, I don't agree with it, but I still think that in America, private businesses have the freedom to employ who they want. And I think that when you paint this with a big broad brush, as if, oh, this is just signs that trans people are just steps away from a transgender holocaust or whatever, like all these like exaggerations or whatever.
I mean,
just
their
think
life expectancy is 36. That's half suicide, but half because they just get murdered and nobody cares about it. But, you know, whatever.
right. I'm sure nobody cares about the transgender people. Exactly.
Not
That's why
anybody that follows you. Not anyone that follows
That's
you.
why
or
the minute
anything you put out.
okay, well, it's not my job to go out and shill for transgender people. That's your job, Alyssa. And second of all,
It's only my job because I have to, because of people like you.
So to a conservative audience, that would have been a good roast, but now in hindsight, it's literally like a fucking self-report. I'm like, why do I need to care about trans people killing themselves? Okay, I'm just going to talk about how they're degenerate.
right. So as far as the transgender military thing, just to get back to what we were originally discussing, I think that it makes perfect sense that the military should not have to pay for transgender sex change operations. I think that if we try to separate the emotion from the situation, if you try to pull the emotion out of this a little bit, look at from a clearly factual basis, transgender
Right.
people
Well,
in the
when you pull
military
emotion out, people die. So, okay.
All right, let's let him finish his point before you jump in, please.
transgender people in the military is extremely expensive on the military. Personally, I agree with Trump's initiative because I don't think that transgender people, that the military is a good place for transgender people to be receiving hormones and surgery, which we can talk about the effects
Why?
that the surgery has. But
Wait, there are other medical procedures that you can undergo when you're provided healthcare from the military, right? That's like saying you shouldn't be provided an operation that's necessary through your military healthcare because it's not a good environment. You know, the recovery process might take a little while. What? We don't apply this logic to any other kind of procedure. Why are we applying it only to sex change operations, which again would make your military stronger? Dumb argument, Hunter.
on top of that, there's therapy, there's hormones, there's a big process, all of which deter them from their best performance in the military, no matter what their job is, whether it's combative or not.
What? What? How
Do you
does
have a rebuttal for that, Alyssa?
What?
I disagree. That's all. I just disagree. And I have,
Oh,
like I
no.
said, plenty of sources to back it up. So.
Oh no.
Okay, let's discuss.
Hunter, no. I mean, Alyssa, no. Please, no. I'm making literally. They're joining the military just so they can get the surgery. If you believe that, then not only are you stupid, you're actually delusional also. Have you considered checking into a psych ward? It would benefit you. Anyway, this is really a bad argument on both my part. I'm making really shitty arguments, but Alyssa is also just like, well, I just disagree. No. You're not pushing back enough. You're letting me win this debate. No.
A question that I think is on all of our minds right now. It's sort of the crux of this whole debate. Hunter has been criticized for making transphobic comments in his videos. Alyssa, do you truly believe that Hunter is transphobic? And if so, please substantiate that with some evidence, please.
Yep, 100%. Well, in order to earn my degree in communications with a minor in political rhetoric and a long list of other things, I actually had to write a mini dissertation on the relation of language and power to humor. And I don't know if you know this. This is actually from a Language and Power textbook by Paul Simpson and Andrea Marr. There's an undeniable connection between hatred and humor, especially when you have humor that is used with a disclaimer, like Hunter tries to do. This was actually from a study on humor and language and racism with like a humor on a KKK site. But it noticed that humor can provide a means for expressing hatred, and thus bigotry can bring its own pleasures to the bigot. So you say you don't hate gay people, but you enjoy making fun of them. There's also a huge component of outsider.
I also make fun of white people.
Right. Well, there's a huge. Then I'm going to get to that now with outsider versus insider humor. So there's outsider humor, which is jokes told by communities who are remote from the communities who form the butt of the joke. Then there's jokes that are told within particular social groups and may incorporate stereotypes of the group itself. So essentially, there's this idea that humor can be used in three ways. It can be used as a tool of oppression and ridicule by the powerful, aka Hunter being a white dude making fun of gay people. It can be used as a form of resistance by the less powerful.
So she's definitely right here that humor can absolutely be used to further bigotry in certain circumstances, but then she had to bring in that I was a white dude. You see how she starts to make like strong arguments, decent arguments to point out some of my bullshit, but then she keeps slapping herself in the face when she says dumb shit like the white dude making this joke. Don't say that.
And it can even be used as an instrument to help galvanize social bonds among disenfranchised groups. So yes, there can be, and I even have some examples here. I brought some examples for me that if Hunter would like to joke about the gay community or the trans community, he can certainly do that. But I think that he could do it in a way that doesn't further stereotype them. So here's a couple of jokes that I printed out.
No.
Politically correct jokes? Is this where we're headed?
No, this is just some of my favorite ones. So I'm going to hold this one up here. So this one says, when your non-binary friend is sad because they keep getting misgendered and they're patting their back and saying,
You're gonna call this humor? You're gonna call that a meme?
Hey, I thought it was no interruptions, but that's okay.
That's true,
All right.
Hunter. Give her a moment.
My
a
apologies.
trans lesbian married to bisexual. Does this make us a BLT?
It's just funny.
I'm going to vomit. I'm sorry.
This
Sorry.
one is for my girls that like girls.
Okay, this is like the cringiest part of the whole debate. Why? There's so many ways you could make your argument stronger. I still enjoy politically incorrect humor that makes fun of people sometimes. But listen, all right, even now as a soy boy libcuck, that argument is still, or those jokes are still hella cringe.
Tried to shop online for bras. Too distracted by boobs.
By boobs?
Got a couple more here, a couple of my personal favorites.
Everyone likes
Stringers aren't
boobs.
worth your money. I've been using one for 3 weeks, and I'm still definitely a lesbian. Oh, this is one of my personal favorites, again, for the ladies. When you're talking to a girl and things start getting serious. She's cutting her nails. And my personal favorite trans joke of all time. I think you guys are really going to love this one. So it's got a little comic, and the guy at the top says, "What's going on? I can see right through you. My son told me he's transgender, so that makes me transparent." There's some jokes about the gay community that are hilarious. I think they're really funny. And you also...
Oh God, those are really cringy jokes, man. Some of them are like kind of cute, but come on, imagine my content back then where I would like get off on making like edgy ass jokes, and this is the kind of joke she presents. Just no. Look at my face right here. That's honestly, that's my face still right now, okay? Just
also don't have to dehumanize them in the process. And I also want to point out that Hunter can think, and I just have one more thing. I also want to point out that Hunter can think that, he's not transphobic, and, maybe he's not. And he can say that he's not responsible for his fans' reactions and whatever their actions are and their behaviors. And you're right, Hunter, you're not responsible. But I think that it says nothing that you know damn well who you're marketing to. You're marketing to people that are anti-LGBTQ, and you're reinforcing those stereotypes. It's the same thing that happens if you had a group of men all together, and one of those men in the group was a rapist, and the other men started making a joke about rape. You're like, oh, it's just a joke. And to them, it's just a joke. But to the rapist standing in the circle, that's reaffirming. They're like, oh, they think it's funny, so it's not a big deal. So that's exactly what Hunter's doing, and he can say all day long that he's not transphobic, but he literally...
That is 100% correct. Yeah, even if I wasn't transphobic, I was furthering transphobia and giving transphobic humor credence to other transphobes. So yeah, true. Good point from Crazy Liberal Chick.
He makes money and he makes his career off like marketing to a target audience that is extremely transphobic and anti-LGBTQ.
True.
And I've got over 6,000 comments and screenshots to prove it, just from how much of what his, how many of his fans have come onto my personal stuff and said things to me.
Okay, we can't necessarily blame people for the behavior of the fans.
Hold on. No, you actually can to a certain degree. I think that if you are harboring a very toxic audience that then goes harasses other people with transphobia, then yeah, you probably could be held somewhat responsible there. It's a gray line though, for sure.
So the jury will strike that from the record. Before you respond, though, I would love for you to bring us some of the jokes that All right, go ahead, Hunter.
I want to respond to some of that first because that was a lot to unpack. All right, so first of all, Alyssa, at the beginning of your argument where you tried to clinically diagnose me like a therapist, I would just say, listen, it's possible that some people, sure, they'll use humor to mask hatred or whatever. Some people do that. I am not one of those people.
Right.
I own what I believe. All right, I have no problem telling you I don't like feminists. So why would I try to pussyfoot around the fact that, pussyfoot around saying that I don't like transgender people? It doesn't make any sense.
Audience, and none of your videos would get monetized. That's why.
My videos already don't get monetized.
Exactly.
Second of all, have you ever watched The Office?
No, I don't really watch The Office. I've only seen bits and pieces of it.
Okay, so I was going to use this as an example. I was kind of assuming you'd seen it. In The Office, there's a part where this guy walks in, he has a big Adam's apple, and one of the main characters says, he's like, hey, pull your shirt up. You look like a transvestite. So what would you say about that show? Is that masking hate? Does that mean, I'm asking you in that?
Yes, I've seen several things that break down the transphobia within The Office. That's not something I was prepared to talk about, but I can...
So that's not necessarily masking hate. Like, obviously the fucking actor probably doesn't hate trans people, but the show, being done at an earlier time, was still making trans people the butt of a joke, which can absolutely lead to harm in certain circumstances, considering the fact that trans people are already marginalized. being made fun of, being treated like they're nothing but the butt of a joke, can lead to more harm perpetuated on trans people. So again, this is kind of an arbitrary line. It's very difficult to say this joke leads to hate and this joke doesn't. But the type of content I was making, she's right. The type of content I was making, consistently misgendering trans people, saying that trans people were mentally ill, making jokes at the expense of trans people, completely misunderstanding the difference between sex and gender, and giving that all to a rabid audience of conservatives and transphobes, yes, that's furthering hatred towards trans people.
Certainly get your source.
Okay, so this really what this is more of an attempt at essentially destroying humor and ruining fun. People are allowed to make jokes.
Ruining fun, guys. How am I supposed to have fun if I can't just mock trans people all day?
People are allowed to make comments. People are allowed to make little jabs and jokes at people for whatever they feel necessary. Sure, not all of them are going to be appropriate, and certain jokes are going to have pushback. But by your logic, then is every time that a stand-up comedian makes an offensive joke, you must think stand-up comedians are absolute monsters.
No, I love stand-up comedians. One of my favorites that really...
There are stand-up comedians that further transphobia. Like we saw this happen with Dave Chappelle. It depends on what the joke is. Wait, why does it keep... Okay.
That really kind of portrays this, like, being able to make fun of minority communities. Hannah Gadsby, she is a great example if you watch any of her stuff.
I know who you're referring to. I've not...
Yeah, don't reference people like that, please. Okay.
No, I have not actually gotten a chance to watch her.
Well,
but
I definitely recommend it. And
so do you think every
with people joking, like the way, like the reason why I have no problem with people making white boy jokes over transgender jokes is because white boys are not oppressed. White boys are not dealing with any real discrimination, any tangible things that are holding them back right now. And you know what? The second the transgender
this is a bad argument.
And the LGBT community.
This is a bad argument. What it is that there are systems in place right now that disproportionately negatively harm trans people, and a lot of those systems that are in place are further fueled by transphobic beliefs, and some of that transphobia can be reinforced via jokes. That's the argument there. Because what she just said, well, white boys aren't going through anything. All I needed to do then is say, well, look, white people or white males have a really high suicide rate. So does it now mean it's bad for you to make a joke about white people? It's deeper than that.
Gets there, then you joke about them all you want. Sure thing. Sure thing.
Right, which we've talked about this earlier, but isn't part of being equal and being treated like an equal society being able to be joked about?
Yeah, right. And I've already given you examples of how you can joke about
those
it.
jokes were politically correct. And you know what? You're more...
I thought they were hilarious, and I'm sure plenty of people think
okay, but
all right, let's take a quick moment. Let's take a quick moment to talk for a second. Okay, Alyssa, you brought up several of Hunter's jokes that you think are not appropriate. Why don't you bring up? Why don't you?
Say any of them. I do have a list.
Since Hunter has too much power to joke about trans people, why don't you present the jokes that he is allowed to say as a cisgender?
The moderator is really fucking awful too. He's obviously on my side, and it's really cringy.
White person. Show us the list of jokes that he would be allowed to say that you would consider to be funny but acceptable from someone of his demographic.
Oh, the stuff I held up earlier.
No, Tell us the jokes. Tell us the jokes that Hunter is allowed to say.
That's the stuff that I.
No. Like in other words,
shut
make us
up,
laugh
Mod.
with the joke that Hunter is allowed to say. You know, give us something that is politically correct enough.
I think we should go back to what we were saying before, because
dude, shut up.
Alyssa, I get what you're saying. You've given me a list of jokes which I am now permitted to say, which again, I think that this is just such a dangerous path, because the minute you tell people that you can't joke about things, that is a violation of free speech.
Look, I'm not saying that you can't. You can do it.
Oh my god. It's my free speech to make fun of trans people. We're not talking about whether or not you have the fucking right to make a joke, Hunter. You brain dead Neanderthal. Okay? We're talking about whether or not making those jokes leads to tangible harm on trans people or not. Anytime a conservative brings up the free speech argument, you can just laugh at them and then spit at them. What a pathetically stupid cop-out. Holy shit.
But I can call you out.
But you actually have the audacity. But you actually have the audacity to claim that because I make edgy jokes, which that's part of what my channel brand is. I don't just make edgy jokes about LGBT people either. I would understand your logic more if every joke I ever made was at the expense of a trans person. I make
Okay, is it a disproportionate edgy joke at the or is it disproportionate edgy jokes at the expense of trans people, Hunter? Yes, the answer is yes.
jokes about everybody. I've made jokes about Asian people. I've made jokes about white people. I've made jokes about women. I make jokes about everyone because you know.
See, I'm sexist and racist too. I'm not just transphobic.
What? I'm good at offensive humor. I know what kind of offends people,
That's
but
something to be very proud of. I'm glad you're proud of that.
I am proud of it because you know what? Shock humor. Okay, you can repeat trash or you can let me talk, but shock humor is extremely important. People need to stop being so pussified. People need to stop being so scared of hearing a minimal little joke, a little offensive comment here and there. You know what? I think it's good for people to hear offensive jokes because it toughens them up a bit. And to address, again, to get back to the actual meat of your point, I am not transphobic because
a fucking boomer talking point. This generation's just too soft. Why don't we make some transphobic and racist jokes around here, man? Come on, hickety-hee-ho. It's not about whether or not people are too sensitive. It's about whether or not that those jokes and the desensitization of marginalizing certain people leads to a tangible harm on that demographic.
I make jokes. By that logic, everyone who's ever made a joke about something offensive or about someone that you deem a oppressed minority is now suddenly a monster or a bigot or a bad person. And as I mentioned in my video response to you, I have talked about countless times, I have defended the LGBT community.
Oh God, here we go.
Yes, I have defended the LGBT community. So wait, let me get this straight. You can't make any jokes about trans people, right? But then if you talk about transgender people being oppressed under Islam, now I'm Islamophobic?
I mean, we could pull up the video if you dress like a Muslim if you want.
Oh, that video was great. That was a super funny video. Yeah. And you know what? The only reason I was forced to take it down is because I actually was kind of afraid YouTube was going to have repercussions. It had nothing to do with me. Because I know you tried to imply that I was hiding something. That video's already been re-uploaded and seen by hundreds of thousands of people. So no big deal there. As far as my videos where I discuss the horrors that the LGBT community experienced under Islam, I just want to know how that suddenly makes me Islamophobic because
such a virtue signal. Don't call me Islamophobic for it. Point out that it's a fucking virtue signal. You're like, look, gay people are really treated badly by the Muslims, but I just like to make jokes about gay people to further them being treated badly here in America, lol. Point out the fact that it's a virtue signal. Don't say it's Islamophobic, bruh. Come on. What? Dude, it's like watching, like, me make really bad arguments and then someone else make equally bad arguments to refute me.
You're putting me in a box here where I'm unable to win. You say, if you make jokes about trans people, even though that's treating them as equals, I'm transphobic, so I should rather turn to your list of, quite honestly, the boringest jokes I've probably ever heard in my entire life instead, or if I actually say, no, hold up, Alyssa, I've talked about real oppression that the LGBT people have experienced, I've made videos, some of which have almost millions of views, you're saying, oh, well, that's just Islamophobia.
Well,
so how?
Because you're not making those videos for that. You're making those videos because, again, you know your target audience, and you know your audience, it's going to feed their Islamophobia and their hatred.
No! The worst responses. Oh my god. She's just making really shitty arguments here. Now she's trying to interpret my intent. Don't tell me what my intent is. You don't know if I was intending to give Islamophobia to my audience of Islamophobies. Come on, man. Again, the argument here is that it's a virtue signal. You get to come up here and say, hey, look, LGBT people are really being oppressed in the places where they're not even able to live their lives freely, and if they do, they're going to get murdered. That's where they're oppressed. But here in America, you know, it's not that bad. It's a way to obfuscate from the issues that LGBT individuals deal with here in this country. There are issues with how LGBT people are treated in Islamic countries. Abso-fucking-lutely. But by only talking about that and then denying the certain level of transphobia that trans people face here in America, it's a virtue signal and it's an obfuscation. That's the response there. Not, well, you just know your target demographic and that's what you're just trying to appeal to their bigotry. The worst fucking response imaginable.
Towards those people, and I would buy, again, I would buy that you.
That's not true. That, like, you're just
LGBTQ plus rights. I would buy it if you were fighting just as hard as you do about the facts with Islam. If you were doing that here with the facts here, but you're not. You're not. It's just jokes here. It seems like you only care about LGBTQ in the sense of like what's going on over there.
No, actually, I care about LGBT people.
I've never seen it at all.
I care about talking about real oppression that LGBT people are experiencing.
No. Don't gaslight. Don't sit here and gaslight. This is a real problem and this isn't. People are dying in this country. People are losing access to healthcare. People are becoming homeless because of this. Just because it's not as bad here as it is in other countries doesn't make it just go away and not be a tangible.
Listen, so she's kind of right here, but then again, she had to bring in like the gaslighting thing, and she just keeps taking optical hits, even though she's technically correct. which is why it looks like I'm winning in this conversation ultimately. And let me go back. So when I say I want to talk about real oppression, again, the response there is, hold on, there's real oppression going on there, but we need to recognize the way that oppression still exists in this country as well. Although over in these other countries, it's a lot more in your face. You know, gay people being thrown off the rooftops. That's pretty tangible. You can look at that right there with your eyes and say, damn, that's oppression. Over here in America, it's a little bit more subtle, believe it or not. But trans people being denied employment opportunities at disproportionate rates as opposed to non-trans people, that's discrimination. Trans people having a higher suicide rate because of societal discrimination, that's oppression. Trans people being disproportionately homeless because they are disproportionately kicked out of their homes because their family is transphobic, that's an issue. That's oppression too. So I don't know. I just feel like there's a there's a lot more of a nuanced way to go about this, and unfortunately, Alyssa just keeps taking really bad optical losses here.
I agree that there are certainly still issues and things that the LGBT community needs to overcome. I do feel that they have equal rights in this society, and I also think that if I'm
like, but wait, no. I was just saying that it's not a right to join the military, but I failed to realize that being denied the opportunity to even apply for the military on the basis of nothing but the fact that you're trans? That is discrimination. That's not equality.
I'm going to choose what I want to talk about. I'm going to defend the LGBT people who are being murdered and massacred every single day in Islamic countries.
But not the ones.
I know. I'm aware that there are.
You won't defend them. You'll just joke about them. That's
No. I'll defend them. Absolutely.
Where?
Right now. Right now. Yes.
Never before you called you out on it?
I absolutely denounce LGBT people being killed in this country. That is horrible. Nor do I support it.
All right.
But for you to claim that,
your jokes embolden the people that even would be willing to commit violence. Doesn't mean that all my old viewers would go out and commit violence, but my jokes would embolden people who would. What a shit argument, Hunter.
Jokes. Me making like a bunch of my videos, a lot of them actually.
I'm just saying, you know who you're appealing to. You know it deep down, and you continue to do it. That's all I'm saying.
That's Alyssa. That's bullshit. You're like, oh, you know who you're appealing to. Oh, you know who you're appealing to because your audience.
I've got thousands of comments. I've got
right. Because a couple. Okay, 6,000 out of 620,000 is a minuscule percentage.
That's still
the mass majority. And plus, you know what? I would ask you this: if you want to claim that my audience reflects who I am as a person, which it does not.
No, I'm just saying they reflect the people.
Hold on, let me finish.
Appeal to.
What about the countless LGBT people and gay people who follow and support me?
I don't know what to tell you. I mean, there's some that do, but I'm sure for every gay person that supports you,
See, this is exactly why she shouldn't make the comment argument either. Oh, man.
Plus, I would ask that a lot of these videos that you point to, you're so hung up on my jokes. I feel like you never actually listen to my overall points I'm trying to make.
Am I allowed to say a couple of the jokes right now? Can I?
Yes, please
I'm
do.
sure they're fucking hilarious.
No, in mine, he made a joke about the reference to the video about me, crazy liberal chick calls me out. He literally made a joke about conversion therapy.
I made a joke. Literally.
But still, conversion therapy.
What was the joke?
And shot
oh my god.
And yet, you referred to transition as a chop and stitch. You said you might think I sound just as crazy as the guy who wants his dick chopped off. Wow, that's really
Okay, so yeah, I would want to know the context of the conversion therapy joke. The chop and stitch. I do remember that. But yeah, some of this, I'm calling trans people crazy in that joke. I can argue all day that it's a joke, but it doesn't take away from the fact that that joke furthers this stigma and this belief that trans people are fucking crazy. And it's that belief that leads to them being denied healthcare, leads to them being kicked out of their homes, and it contributes to the disproportionate suicide rate. So the better argument again here would be, hey, I understand that it's a joke, but that joke gives credence to bad ideas that contributes to societal harm on trans people.
Jokes, but see, that video
there really isn't any difference between a gay person and a normal person, except the gay person is going to hell. I don't hate gay people.
And then, hold up. You know what?
You should not have brought that
I demand a response. I get a rebuttal right here.
No,
I get a rebuttal.
All right, decorum, delegates, decorum. Let's cool it off. Let's cool it off just a little bit. Hunter, go.
you referencing that joke, Alyssa, come on, don't be so predictable. You're literally proving my point. In that video, I'm going to defend myself because this is going to be on my channel most likely. In that video, I made a joke about gay people, and then I made a joke very similarly about white people. And the point was to show that more people are going to get triggered over the gay joke than the white person joke, which thank you for proving my point. Secondly,
Yes, more people are going to be upset about a joke at the expense of a marginalized group than they are going to be offended by a... Okay. This is like 2D politics here.
Secondly, the dick chopped off joke. You're just proving my point even more. You are so hung up on the jokes I make, you overlook the the broader point I'm actually trying to convey. I throw in jokes because I like to be edgy, I like shock humor, and honestly, the jokes in my videos I find hilarious. Just like you find those politically correct, boring jokes funny, I find the edgy jokes funny. However, the overall point in that one video was about how I was talking about how the Trump administration isn't against transgender people, just like what we're debating. I was talking about how the media exploits transgender suffering to prop up their agenda against Donald Trump. All right? I'm against LGBT suffering, and I'm against the media exploiting them. Far too often, you look at these little jokes.
The best response here to half of my arguments are just, you're virtue signaling, Hunter. This is a virtue signal. This is so that you can pretend that you actually care about trans people while contributing to the harm perpetuated on trans people. That's it. Alyssa's not doing well here in this conversation at this point.
And you say, oh, he makes jokes, so he must be transphobic. Yet you overlook my actual points. If you judge people by the jokes they make over the actual points they make, I'm sorry, that's extremely backwards logic.
No, it's hard to take your point seriously when your jokes are absolutely disgusting. And the reason that the joke about the white guy was funny and the trans one or the gay one wasn't is, again, because if we joke about white people, it's not going to make white people more likely to not get access to healthcare. It's not going to take white men out of 50% of patients.
She needs to explain this better. She's not explaining it right. In the mind of a very simple-minded conservative who still are thinking, they're thinking at the brain capacity of like a kindergartner, then they're thinking, wait, I make a joke and then suddenly gay people are denied healthcare? Huh? That doesn't make sense. You need to explain the systems in place, the discrimination, how contributing to said discrimination leads to long-term negatives on gay people. There's a lot more there. Second of all, those two jokes, although I did joke at the expense of white people, the joke there was that gay people aren't normal. And then the white people joke was like that some white people disproportionately fuck their sisters or something. One joke was obviously a lot worse than the other because one joke was arguing that they're not normal people, whereas the other joke was just like, LOL, white people disproportionately do this incest thing. I don't feel like the jokes that I made in that video were even comparable.
Transgender jokes.
Language shapes society, and society shapes language. It is a cycle, and those in power get control of the language, and people like you've got a huge audience, and who's in power right now? 80-90% of positions of power are white males.
So go vote for someone else.
Right. Okay, of course I can go vote for somebody else, but you're not understanding that those jokes against minority communities hold more harm than the jokes against people who are in power.
I'm just shocked at how racist you are, first of all.
To assume, racist.
Because all these white men are in power, you just automatically assume they're white men, so they must be evil enemies of transgender people.
No, I don't assume anything. I just know my history. That's all. It's all. But
All right, I think we've come to a nice little head here. Why don't we...
Oh my God, such bad arguments on her part. Oh, it hurts. It hurts because I am making really fucking stupid arguments, but then she's making such bad arguments too. White men in power. That's the problem? Don't do the id pull thing. Come on, man. There are better ways that you can argue this, right? Surely.
We give it 1 minute to each of you just to wrap up this one point, and then we're going to go on to some other topics. How about that? Alyssa, you start.
I'd like to hit Hunter back with one of the quotes from his videos, Dear Liberals, Stop Brainwashing Kids. If you can only further your agenda by brainwashing impressionable children, then your agenda is most likely stupid. Considering Hunter's base, 95% of them are under 18, you should take your own advice on that. No, it is true. It is true.
Not true. Literally, factually and objectively untrue.
If you've got proof of that, then show me.
Sure. Sure. All right. No, okay. I can do this. Hold on 1 second. Let me pull it up right now.
Oh, no,
So, Alyssa, I know you've only been in the YouTube game for a little while, but you know that you can actually view your audience? Did you know that?
Yeah.
Right, so my largest demographic, 40.3%, which can be seen right here, is 18 through 24-year-olds. My second largest demographic is 25 through 34-year-olds. So don't come at me with some of that. That is such cheap, you call me leafy. That's such a classic leafy tactic. You're like, oh, your fan base is all a bunch of kids. That's it. Sorry, I'm done.
Whatever.
All right, Hunter. Do you want to wrap this up for now?
16.
I would like.
don't make claims. Please. Don't bring up like the age of the audience in a debate and then double down on it, okay? Helpful hint, when the other person has access to demographics that you don't have access to, don't double down on the fact that their audience is all children, okay? Because that was a loss that she just took that she didn't need to take.
I would like to give my closing point for this segment as
Yes.
well. Yeah, I just want to make it very clear that my jokes do not dictate who I am as a human being. I don't think that my I don't think that my jokes dictate that I am a transphobic person, especially if you look at my track record.
Freudian slip.
If you look at how, from the very start, I've said I don't hate trans people and that transgender people deserve human rights. From the very start, I've said that for a lot of transgender people, sex change operation is good and necessary for them. I've made countless videos defending LGBT people against the oppression and the horrors they experience under Islam, and I have raised awareness of this to hundreds of thousands of people. And quite honestly, I do feel that I've done more for the LGBT community than you, Alyssa.
All right.
That's hilarious. No, I have a response to
Because
that.
you get on
Okay.
here and you get up on your high horse and you shill for a bunch of people,
right.
but then when push comes to shove, you would rather me be quiet about the horrors the LGBT people face under Islam than dare
I
to
don't
speak
want
about
you
it
to
because
be
you don't want me to look
quiet. Tell me
Islamophobic.
you're not a hypocrite and talk about both equally. That's what I want to see.
right.
Because you can't sit here and talk all day long about what's going on with LGBTQ discrimination or deaths or anything that's going on with Islam, but you can't say anything but joke about the people that are suffering here.
I don't joke. I joke about
Okay.
LGBT people, but I don't joke about
Very
people
much
suffering.
taken seriously.
All right.
And the fact that you think you've done more for the LGBTQ community than me is laughable. And you know what? Maybe I
I
have.
literally do joke about people suffering. When I say that like you're almost as crazy as the guy that wants his dick chopped off, I'm literally joking at the expense of somebody suffering mental anguish. Like, provably false claim, Hunter.
Not as much time to go out and do more things or make more videos because I actually have to work for a living, unlike some people, Hunter.
All right, we're gonna move on to the
Okay.
next. We're gonna move on to the next topic. If our audience is watching, you can.
All right, I think I might pause it here, okay? But god damn, that was rough. That was rough on my part, but it was also rough on her part because she was not making good arguments. She really wasn't. Also, like, you'll notice some of her verbiage there. She was like, you can't even make this joke. You can't joke about this, or you can't talk about the Muslim stuff and then not joke about this. Like, her using words like that makes it sound like she's trying to police speech. Again, the rebuttal there is that, Hunter, you can talk about the oppression that goes on in other countries. The oppression that LGBT people suffer in other countries is really fucking disgusting and it's really terrible. But it just seems a little inconsistent, and it seems a little bit like you're virtue signaling when you only want to talk about oppression overseas, but then you dismiss the oppression that trans people face in this country. I do want to wrap up something else though, is this Alyssa person, I saw some people asking to to link her YouTube. I'm not going to do that because this Alyssa person, despite overall still making or having better arguments while failing to really deliver them properly, is a massive piece of shit. So you guys might remember a couple years back, a bunch of people on the alt-right leaked some like cringy rap song I made because I got really high and I made a cringy rap song one night because I thought it would be fun. And then they thought it was like some big own, and they claimed that I wrote a rap song for my side hoe, which is like, I guess you just think I'm living like the rock and roll lifestyle over here, bruh. But no, actually what happened was I got hella high, and then I wrote a little rap song for fun, and then sent it to one of my friends, who then leaked it to try to like stab me in the back for some reason. It was very weird. But something else I want to bring up. The alt-right, the neo-Nazi, far-right Groyper types, right? They got a hold of this cringy rap song I made because, again, they thought it was some kind of own on me when I was like, I made a cringy rap song when I was high. Like, what is this proving, right? And do you know how they got a hold of that? This Alyssa chick. She sent the neo-Nazis and the Groypers my little cringy rap song to attack me. So she gets up here and pretends to be all virtuous, but she was literally willing to side with the neo-Nazis and with the motherfucking Groypers because of how much she disliked me. Just let that sink in. She's up here trying to act like the virtuous lefty type, when in reality, she is willing to correspond and work with known fucking neo-Nazis because she didn't like me. Just let that sink in, okay? The rap song that I made was fucking cringy. I'm not a rapper. That's why I got really high and did it for fun. I never intended it to fucking leak. I mean, it's cringy. I'm not embarrassed by it. It's just a fucking cringy rap song that I made in one night when I was high. Like, it doesn't prove anything. But what it does prove is that this Alyssa person, although maybe having better arguments in this conversation, is a massive scumfuck who should not be trusted at all. She does not practice what she preaches, and she is willing to work and correspond with literal fucking neo-Nazis, groypers, and the alt-right because of how much she dislikes me. She has Hunter Avallone derangement syndrome to a T. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and click the bell so you get notified when I drop a new video.